Moving right along to our regular agenda items. We'll start with item 19, which is a Rose Garden termination agreement, a request to adopt resolution 11660. And we have Mr. Worth here to make a presentation on that item. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item pertains to some land that actually is central to the next item on the regular agenda, the zoning and development agreement case which you're going to be considering for Southbridge 2. As you may be aware, some of this land is shown on the diagram. If I get it centered properly. Some of this land was subject to a previous development agreement that the city entered into with an entity called Rose Garden Development, LLC, in 2005. And pursuant to that development agreement, we've had a grand total of 16 different documents that have been executed and recorded against these properties since 2005. Out of those 16 documents, 6 of those were the development agreement and its various amendments themselves. But there was also some easements, a covenant to convey notice that we would convey land at a certain development milestone was achieved. There was some memos describing new legal descriptions and a declaration of use restrictions. These were all pursuant to that 2005 development agreement. The development agreement effectively expired in 2015, 4 years ago, because the developer failed to meet development timelines, development milestones that were in the agreement. Yet these documents are still recorded against the properties. And in an effort to clear that up and eliminate any confusion whatsoever, we're asking you to consider approving the contract that's before you, which by mutual consent with the city and the successors to Rose Garden Development LLC will terminate and allow these 16 different documents to be removed from the title reports for these parcels of land. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Worth. See no questions asked on this individually. I think we do have a request to speak on just this item. I'm not sure. Okay, I'll go ahead and... Are they all together in the 1920? There's no separate on 19. Okay, but there are some separates on 20 as indicated. Okay, thank you. Yes, and Vice Mayor Littlefield.
I just had a question for you. If this is approved tonight, does the title stay with the city?
Councilman Littlefield, this doesn't affect any ownership. The title stays with whoever the title stays with. I think these are all city parcels.
Thank you.
Correct.
All right, Councilmember Cordy.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 11660. Second.
Motion's made by Councilwoman Cordy.
Your Honor.
And
Your Honor. Excuse me. The whole 2 items need to be presented, and there needs to be public comment, and then the votes will come separate on the 2 items. That's the way we have it agendized tonight.
all right, I see. Well, we don't have that indicated here, but as far as the cards are concerned, it is for the 2 items
That's
together.
correct.
Okay.
It's noted on the agenda that the items would
So
be
we want to hear
considered
all
together.
of them. Do we want the presentation then on 20 then at the same time, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So you're replaced for now, Mr. Worth. Yes.
Yes,
Mr.
good evening.
Carr, welcome.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lane and members of the council. As Dan Worth alluded to, this is the second item of this group of 2 things that tonight that's the culmination of a lot of effort on both parts of the applicant and city staff to bring forward a project in our downtown before you tonight for your consideration. This project is, as you can see here, is called Southbridge 2. The general location here, as you can see, is south of the Arizona Canal, southeast of the Arizona Canal, and west of Scottsdale Road. A portion of that of the site, as you can see, Site D. And I'm going to go ahead and refer to these sites individually throughout the presentation, so I'll just make a note here. Site A is here. Site B is a adjoining but separate parcel here. Site C is the parcel directly southeast of the canal and east of Goldwater. And Site D is west of Goldwater, south of the canal, and is comprised currently of the city's Rose Garden parking lot and some of the applicant's property here. So you can see, again, this property is located in the heart of our downtown, and the site here, you can see Site A is comprised of mostly 1 to 2 story buildings on the site that the applicant is calling the Hotel Triangle. It's going to be comprised of 3 different uses on that site that I'll get into along 6th Avenue and Stetson. Site B here, you can see again along Stetson and 6th Avenue. Site C and D, a little bit closer view of those locations here. You can see primarily 1-story buildings, existing retail on Site C with some parking located along the back. Site D is again the Rose Garden parcel for city parking, as well as the applicant's own parcel here on the west side. This presentation, again, is tonight. The applicant is requesting basically 4 items for your consideration. Those 4 items are comprised of many different resolutions and ordinances to get it there, but the 4 main items are a rezoning from the current C2 and downtown residential specialty districts to the downtown core, downtown mixed use, and downtown mixed use type 3 areas, which also include a planned block development overlay. In addition, the applicant is requesting abandonment of several alleys that run throughout the site, which I'll show later in the presentation. There's 4 resolutions related to that. There's another resolution related to the associated development agreement for the project. And finally, there's a resolution that is authorizing the purchase and sale agreement for that Rose Garden parcel located on the western side of the property. You can see here the applicant's proposal straddles many different land use designations, or several different land use designations in the downtown, prominently the downtown core, which is in blue, and that downtown multiple use. The downtown regional use is just on the other side of the canal, our most intensive use in the downtown. Real quickly, just here, the existing zoning you can see is mostly our C2 DO in the location of this area, and it will be, again, transitioning to our downtown core as well as downtown mixed-use land zoning designations as shown on the map here. The overall site plan, as you can see here, again, an area where the largest concentration of development will be here on Site A, adjacent to Scottsdale Road, west of Scottsdale Road. 3 buildings here with an office building on the northern component, a hotel on the southeastern component, and a residential component on the southwest. Site B is the location of a market, planned market, and also some residential units there. Site C is primarily residential, 2 large residential towers with the ground floor of retail. And Site D, occupying the current Rose Garden site, would be another retail or residential site with a little bit of retail at the direct corner of Goldwater and 5th Avenue. This area, again, this project straddles 3 different types of our downtown typology. The first is Type 1, which is our low-scale typology, and you can see that in green. That is primarily our Old Town area and our Craftsman Court, Marshall Way area, our gallery spaces. You can see a portion of the project is located within that. That's the portion that directly fronts 5th Avenue. Another portion is within our Type 2, which is our next intensive district, and that's located again along the canal. That's on Site D. And then the remainder of the portion of the site is within our newly adopted Type 3 that was adopted about 2 years ago by the council, and that's our most intensive typology within the downtown. That would have a base height of 84 feet with an allowance of up to 150 feet with approved bonuses. The applicant's proposal here, as you can see tonight, does take advantage of those bonuses for height on several portions of the site. You can see again on this area here, this triangle area, the residential portion of the site is maxing out at a total of 150 feet. The office space would max out at 128 feet, and the hotel would also max out at 150 feet. Site B, because it does straddle a portion of the Type 1 area, is going to stay at the maximum height of 48 feet. Site C is doing a little bit of both. It's going to max that area that's within the Type 1 area at 48 feet, while the remainder is going to exceed that up to a height of 139 feet. The applicant has made a recent change to their proposal to limit this building height, as you might have seen from your packets. The original proposal was for 150 feet maximum on this site, and that has been limited to 139 feet on one of the portions of the 2 towers, with the other tower being 129 feet. Finally, the area that's within Type 2 the Rose Garden site will be limited to a maximum height of 65 feet as shown here. Getting a little bit closer into the site plan to describe what's going on with these different areas, Site A, starting with Site A, you can see, and this is similar to a lot of the different projects within the proposal, there's a retail component on the ground floor of the buildings to keep that activation that's currently located there going by continuing to have retail that attracts visitors, attracts residents to utilize downtown. And so that retail component has been maintained. The hotel lobby is also located on that ground floor. And then from there, you have those different uses rising. You have the office component above this, again, reaching 128 feet. The hotel reaching 150 feet, and the residential above this reaching 150 feet. To note here, this graphic shows it pretty well, is two areas that are utilizing, the applicant is utilizing for compensation for their abandonment, the abandonment of right-of-ways, is the dedication of a plaza area here, Site B Plaza, as well as Site B Access Way that runs between 5th and 6th Avenue here, that provides vehicle and pedestrian access between those two roadways. This is a diagram showing how those buildings are going to look in section in the bottom, and there's an elevation of that market building on Site B and section of Site B as well. Things to note here are, again, the maximum height as well as the applicant's revisions to the downtown standards for step back. This line in blue is the city's typical requirement of building step backs within the downtown for this type of building. The applicant's proposal is shown in green here. Similarly, on this side, you can see the applicant's proposal was to take that straight up. This section, again, is taken through the middle of this building, so it's a little hard to see this lower component of that residential building that would be in front of that, but generally speaking, they needed an amendment to the step-back plane to accommodate the taller buildings. And these are some elevations of those buildings on that site. Again, a little close up, you can see the hotel building on the left side of the screen. This would be looking from Scottsdale Road, looking west. So these are the buildings that front directly onto Scottsdale Road. Office building, again, 128 feet. Hotel building, maximum 150 feet. Looking from Stetson Drive, looking south on the northern side of that triangle, again, the office component, and beyond that, the residential building. And finally, from 6th Avenue, you can see looking north, again, the residential building and the hotel building, both reaching a height of 150 feet maximum. Moving on to Site C of the proposal, this is located, again, adjacent to the Arizona Canal, and it has another component of retail being reintroduced into the site. The amount of retail that's shown here is roughly equivalent to what's existing on the sites currently, all those different parcels. So the applicant is ensuring that that amount of retail is retained with the proposal, and then there's residential units located above this. Of note, this is the proposed location of the relocation of the ballpark's horse fountain. If you remember, that's currently located in this intersection and a roundabout, and the applicant is proposing to relocate that at their cost to a location here at the corner to help strengthen that connection a little bit better, make it a little safer for people that want to visit the fountain. Some building elevations of that site. This is from the canal side looking to the southeast. Again, you can see this shows 150 feet in this graphic, but the applicant has agreed to restrict themselves to 139 feet at this building and to 129 feet on this building. That basically has the effect of taking one floor off the building, as shown. These are elevations from the side. This site being long and linear is, you can see the building is kind of narrow as it looks from one side of it. And so these are two different views, one from Goldwater as you'll be looking kind of towards the northeast at the side of the building here, and the other one from the opposite direction. And finally, from 5th Avenue looking northwest, you can get and see the restriction in height and the ability with that type 1 typology to limit the building height directly adjacent to 5th Avenue at 48 feet. This is a graphic that's a section of that Site C. As you can see again here, the applicant's proposal is shown in this dotted line with the requirement for the downtown along the canal being shown here. This graphic was not modified prior to the hearing, but again, it would have the height restrictions that the applicant is proposing would have the effect of removing this top floor from this building. Along 5th Avenue, you can see here that they're maintaining that 48-foot maximum height as is dictated by the downtown plan and our downtown zoning ordinance for those buildings that front onto our Old Town or gallery spaces along 5th Avenue. And finally, with Site D here, again, a small component of retail space that's going to be provided at the hard corner between at Goldwater and North 5th Avenue. Then this will be primarily a residential building of up to 102 units. The first floor would be parking that would be provided, private parking with an underground parking garage also being provided for public parking. I'll get into that a little bit in a bit. This building here shows the elevations, as you can see, along 5th Avenue, that elevation, limited to 65, 66 feet in height, and how that amendment by the applicant shown in green is different from our typical requirement shown here on these dashed lines. As I mentioned, there is a number of right-of-ways, primarily abandonments for alleyways that are located throughout the site. Those areas are highlighted here in yellow. Those areas are needed to unify development parcels within each of those development areas to allow the full potential of those developments. As you can see, those three sites, A, C, and D, require those abandonments. As compensation for those abandonments, the applicant is providing those things listed on the screen right here. First is relocation of neighborhood utilities, and that's going to affect all of the abandonment sites. There will also be some canal bank improvements along Site C, as well as the aforementioned Bob Parks horse fountain relocation at Site C, as well as a dedicated license for the city's use of that fountain plaza area. At Site B, the access dedication is what I mentioned that earlier, at Unger Way. Site B, that's also being proposed as consideration. The Area B Plaza, as I mentioned before, and there are two access ways, one located under the building at Site C and one located under the building at Site A that are also provided as compensation for the abandonment right-of-ways. Similarly, in addition to those direct compensation for the abandonment of the right-of-ways, the applicant is also providing community benefits as a whole, which from the site, including an event deck located at Site A that the city will have access to utilize. 78 spaces of public parking, which are going to be provided and that says Site C, and I'm sorry, that's actually Site D with the Rose Garden parcel. That's going to be provided under the Rose Garden, under that structure that's going to be built there. In addition, 397 parking spaces for nighttime and evening and weekend uses will be provided at Site A for the public use. And I've highlighted those locations on this map just to kind of orientate you again. Relocation utilities throughout the project, canal bank improvements located here. The Bob Parks fountain is going to be relocated to here. At Unger Way, the Site B access way here. Site B Plaza is this triangular piece adjacent to the marketplace here. And then the access way for underneath the building C is located, enters here and goes under the building and exits over here. That's a public access way that's being provided. Similar public access way is provided under Site A. And then those three community benefits that are not part of the direct compensation, again, are shown in green. That event deck space is located between the three towers here at Site A. 78 spaces of public parking is located here underneath the Rose Garden building, or the new building at the Rose Garden site. And finally, those 397 spaces of nighttime and weekend uses are located under this building for use. I want to get a little bit into the parking now next for the project just so everybody's on the same page as what the applicant is presenting as far as their parking program for the site. As you can see, the sites A and B are combined because those sites are parked collectively under one parking structure. So with the uses at each of the sites, you can see the gross parking required. The next column over is the net parking required after reductions. Those reductions could include shared use reductions, parking improvement district credits, and credits for outdoor patios. And finally, you can see the column on the far right is the actual physical number of spaces the applicant is proposing at each of those sites. So the totals, again, you can see about 1,600 gross would be required. With all the reductions, that number drops to about 1,415, and the applicant is about 1,519 total physical spaces provided at the project. And I wanted to show this graphic just to provide a little bit of context as to where public parking is located in this area in the downtown and some of those spaces. Again, the project is located here in red and also this area in blue. You can see directly adjacent is the existing parking spaces under the original Southbridge project at 284 spaces. Across the canal on Marshall Way, you have 300 spaces at the waterfront, 2,200 spaces at the Nordstrom parking spaces, and you also have the large amount of spaces at the Fifth Avenue parking garage here, 409 spaces. There are smaller parking lots located throughout, and also those located east of Scottsdale Road near the Galleria. That concludes my presentation for this evening. The applicant is also here to present, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Gar. We will address maybe all the questions after the applicant makes a presentation, and we receive comments.
Thank you. Thank you. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, for your records, I'm Jordan Rose with Rose Law Group, and with me today, I'm really honored to be here with Jennifer Unger and Carter Unger, Randy Brown, Jose Ramirez, Daryl Wilson, Don Cartier, Cameron Carter, my law partner, and Jennifer Hall from our offices. This is a really local team, and we're creating a project. They're creating a project for Scottsdale, by Scottsdale. I'm just going to talk to you. You've talked about this for 25 years. You've read thousands of pages, I am sure, by now, and you've had lots of phone calls. Brad did an incredibly complete job at his presentation, so thank you to staff and management and the city attorney's office for working with us so hard. I'm going to be brief, and I just want to focus on the things that we have done since Planning Commission and since we started talking with the, hold on a second. How do I do this? Sorry. Since we started working with management, staff, your attorneys, and yourselves and the community. So let me just run through those things, and then I'll have Carter come up and address you. First of all, we've improved the elevation along the canal with a 10-foot step back. And so that's very meaningful and allows us to have a real diversity in the look and feel of that building on the canal. And thank you for those suggestions. We've added 33% public space, and I'll walk you through some of these. The public lawn up here that Brad referred to, and there's all these public connections, pedestrian connections throughout this space everywhere. An urban grocery, public recreation area, and the public open market area. We've expanded the horse fountain, made it in a place that's more accessible and safe, improved public spaces here, and then improved the canal. This is a hammock garden, which will be an original thing that Scottsdale only has, a real signature approach. And then on the north side of the canal, which this team's not building on, we've even agreed in the stipulations to improve that side of the canal. So this should be a fantastic place for pedestrians and tourists and residents and property owners. Spring Creek has bonded for the is being required to bond for the improvements, so the public and the city is protected, and that was something that the mayor asked for, and we were happy to give, and your city attorneys documented that. Spring Creek has developed a tenant relocation and support plan, and you all received a copy of that, so thank you for that suggestion. And then we are providing excess parking and $3.4 million of public parking. So I can walk you through this, but the total spaces here on Site A are 860 spaces, with 397 of those available on nights and weekends to the public. And here on Site C the total parking is 493. And then at the Rose Garden, the total parking spaces are 252, with 78 as exclusive public parking. So we are definitely providing a real benefit. And thank you to the community for suggesting that. So, construction access management plan. This was a question from merchants and from councilwomen, many council people, about our access management. I personally, and Cameron here, we live and work there. Our biggest investment is there in our building and at Southbridge. And so we were the first to make sure that our traffic management and the construction management access plan is really solid. And so we've stipulated, and Don Cartier is here who can talk to this if you have specific questions, but that access, and this is in the development agreement, access to all properties affected by construction at all times will be guaranteed, period. And we're allowing for 2 lanes to be accessible during construction. And the reason that works is because this is not a piecemeal development. And so I could walk you through these, or the traffic engineer can, but these are our documented plans. And I just wanted to point out that when we have a temporary disruption, like the horse fountain moving, and we have to have some sort of closure, those are stipulated to happen prior to work hours or after work hours. And that makes me, so I'm not here standing up in front of you yelling about it too. So we have widespread support from those closest to the site. And thank you to all the people in the audience today who showed up to talk and who have written in. These green dots represent property owners who have expressed support for Southbridge. And the red dots, there's 4 of them. Those are property owners that oppose. I would point out that the property owners there's only 2 property owners, but they own these 4 spaces. So thank you to our supporters. And the list just goes on, and it's really a diverse group of people. People who I don't think, except for maybe with the exception of the bond campaign, have come together and supported anything, maybe in their lifetime. So that's really a credit to the community coming together. And thank you. Okay, so the last thing that we did, and thank you, Councilwoman Clapp, for the suggestion and working with your management to make this work. We are lowering 2 of the buildings on the canal, and that's dramatic. That's 129 and 139 feet from 150. So finally, before I bring Carter up, I wanted to say the Unger family and the team have worked for 25 years on this project, and it's an assemblage, and that's because they could have come forward earlier. They could have come with piecemeal projects, one after another, and the city would not have benefited, but they stayed true to their vision. And they have been the team that's brought literally the best projects in our state. The Royal Palms, this same team did the Royal Palms, is winner of Condé Nast Awards and U.S. News Awards and Forbes Awards, and the Hermosa Inn winning Food and Wine and Zagat. I mean, these are amazing properties, in Southbridge with Canal Convergence and the award-winning projects there. These 3 projects are arguably the most iconic projects in our valley. They're known around the world as a real there. And those are the guys right there that are sitting there that made it happen, and that's just amazing. They're local, and they're amazing. So Paradise Valley, Phoenix, and Scottsdale in the past have all taken a chance on this Unger family, Spring Creek Development, Allen and Phelps, Ox Urban team to fulfill this unique vision. And now they're partnered with a well-regarded international developer with extensive experience and who's known for placemaking around the world. And this local team with character and wanting to build this vision, and they've never disappointed before. So the Unger family is a visionary one with a history of building the most iconic projects in this state, and they're here in Scottsdale. And they spent 25 years doing the right thing and assembling this project to complete the vision, and this is the same team here to complete this vision for Scottsdale. And so with that, I'd bring Carter up to talk a little bit, and then we would answer questions at the end or whenever you would prefer. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr.
Carter Unger with Spring Creek Development. I wanted to first thank you, Mayor, council members, city staff, and even more importantly, the community members and citizens that are here to support and, yes, to express their concerns. No project will ever become a truly amazing location that feels local without the local input. We have tried very hard to listen to as many people as we can to create the best project possible. And for the council members up there, no matter which way you vote tonight, I hope each of you knows that this project has been enhanced and made better because of every single one of you up there. And I thank you for that. You know, there's a lot of benefit to this project, but the main one is about people. Life is about people, relationships, our brothers, sisters, friends, and we want to create an area where everybody can thrive. There are a lot of people that are doing great right now, but there are also a lot that don't do as well because of the reliance on a tourism season that doesn't last as long as I think all of us would love. And if I could use this projector, I want to put a couple things up from Elliott Pollock's firm, and sorry if it's shaking. It's not an earthquake. It's just my nerves. You know, it is wonderful that the city of Scottsdale will be estimated to receive over $15 million in direct tax from the construction, and then an ongoing annual direct tax in the form of property sales and bed tax of just over $4 million. Currently, all of our land holdings in the project that you saw before brings in $350,000 total of sales and property tax. So this means more repairs for roads, things that can go into public safety, go fire department and police. But that's great, and I am very excited about that. But what I really am excited about is the estimate for during construction, and it's over $1 billion of economic output. And then once the project is complete, and I apologize, I'm not good with the zooming, we're looking at $290 million of ongoing annual economic impact and economic output. These aren't just numbers, though. This isn't just a spreadsheet. It's not about profit, it's about people. What these numbers represent are birthday presents, anniversary vacations, groceries, electric bills. This number of $290 million a year will improve the lives of our citizens. And I am very excited to be here today, and I know we've got a packed house, so I will relinquish. I don't have anything left to relinquish. Thank you for your time, and I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Unger. I think what we'll do, if it's all right with you, we're going to go ahead and hear the public comment, which is quite extensive, but nevertheless, I will come back to you for questions. And as I just mentioned, it is quite extensive. We have over 30 cards. And so the normal 3 minutes allowance is going to be reduced to 6 minutes. We do have a number of people who have combined cards to... I'm sorry. We just want to make this as long and evening as possible. But anyway, to reduce it down to 2 minutes. But in those cases where they have additional cards, they will be given some additional time that's commensurate to the extent of cards that have been donated to. So a single card will be 2, and then, of course, on the basis of the cards that may be donated time, it will be 3, 4, or 5, depending upon what's on there. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and start with that, and I'd ask that in order to try to expedite that, even with the time change, it's going to take a little while to get through this, so I would ask for everybody to try to assist in being as concise and precise in their concerns, their position or otherwise, and so we'll have as much time to listen to substantive conversations as they come. So if you don't need the 2 minutes or whatever time, pass it on. So I'll start with Patty Badenoch, followed by Mike Norton. And I would ask that, as I mentioned, the second party, that they're ready to move into position to go to the podium. That'll help us. Ms. Badenoch, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Patty Badenoch, 45-year resident here in Scottsdale. It's really like, I hate to say something in opposition, it's like saying something against Santa Claus. However, I have to keep my passion and my heart intact. The traffic and parking issues will further produce compromise to drive and shut many shoppers out. And how does this height and density maintain the insurance relative to being sensitive to the surrounding businesses? You talk a good game. The reality is evident. I object to this as being in compliance to City Shape 2020. This project defies one of the 6 guiding principles, which states to value Scottsdale's unique lifestyle and character. The preservation of our unique lifestyle and character is systematically being destroyed. Some of us are the old native Scottsdalians, and many of us moved here in appreciation and love of the Western ambiance and character this town is supposed to represent. Now we're like the native Indians before. We are being systematically destroyed and replaced. The means are different, but the outcome is the same. The freedom to improve one's property should not come at the expense of neighboring businesses. Special care must be taken in land use decisions to avoid the negative impact on existing properties. Compromising with glittery generalities or of interpretations of monetary gain of a few is not in good faith. In the end, it destroys excellence as possibilities. How does adding all these people going to add to the quality of life in terms of impacting infrastructure issues? Pretty soon you reach the tipping point of a population that creates unintended consequences no one will be able to afford or maintain. Protect our lifestyle before it's gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Badenoch. Mike Norton will be followed by, never stops on this, Sonny Kirtley.
Mayor Lane and council members, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I very carefully drafted a speech so that I could stay within 3 minutes, and now I think I should throw this away. Over the last 3 or 4 years, we've learned a lot of lessons about how we should govern the city of Scottsdale. We became very active in opposing actions that we disapproved. We became very active in insisting that the city follow its own charter and protect our preserve. One of the lessons that we learned through that process is that when the city follows its own rules and observes its own laws and honors its own guidelines, that the citizens respect the city and the citizens support city government. That lesson was told very loudly over the last few months as people who deeply opposed each other's positions over the last 3 years came together to support the bond program. Today, the question is, will our city council govern in respect for its own laws, its own guidelines, its own policies, and its own code, or will we fall apart and go back to subjective reasoning in lieu of objective reasoning and careful application of our own laws? From 2009 through 2019, there have been 7 steps taken by this city that would lead you to the conclusion that Southbridge 2 would be a slam dunk. 2009, we adopted the new standards for the Old Town the architectural plan. 2010, we approved the infill incentives, including a stated objective that the projects that were built would be concentrated urban core projects. That's objective 2.1 of the infill. 2017, we talked about architectural guidelines. 18, we talked about the new plan. And now if we apply those standards, I don't understand how you do anything other than approve Southbridge 2. If you refuse to follow those standards, you're telling us that you don't respect the laws that we have already adopted. And that's where voters and citizens begin to check out. Maintain the momentum that we have already established, please, and follow our own principles objectively and rather than subjectively, and citizens and voters will continue to support this city council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. Johnny Kirkley.
Almost got it right. Good evening, Mayor Lane.
Never happened, but welcome anyway.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Sonny Kirtley, 52-year resident of Scottsdale. Our city is really fortunate to have a local developer who's putting his heart and soul into projects on land that their family owns. For more than a year and a half, Carter has been totally available for individuals, small groups, large groups, odd times of the day to do his presentation, to answer questions, to call back. The transparency on this was so incredible that to a person at the Planning Commission, the support was there from the public as well as the commission. They said they've never seen a project come in as transparent as this. So here we are, a week and a half before the council's final hearing, and there's opposition. Where were they before? The concern is that, unfortunately, the recently formed Committee on Preservation of Old Town focuses on existing, as Mike pointed out, ordinances, decisions that were made some time ago on Type 3, higher buildings, and on our existing parking requirements. It's just unreasonable for us to select one developer and say, wait a minute, we're going to have you required to do something different than what is written in our rules. So, addition to being the late entry, they've shared on Facebook and the internet inaccurate information. The building's 16 stories high. They're digging and putting illegal parking under the street and so on. And this is unfortunate. It's something that COGS fights all the time, is to be sure the facts are out in the public. And so in the spirit of inviting even more public input, Attorney Jordan pointed out changes that have been made since the Planning Commission, where there was a 7-0 vote. I have 2 seconds. So I'm offering, in the spirit of goodwill to this new PAC group, since you're coming to the play lately, to take a look at, would you go with a continuance to remove your opposition? Or are the additions here sufficient to say, sit back, let's see this fabulous local team do their work? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kirtley. Chuck, Vivian? And followed by Debbie Crawford.
Well, I don't have a speech prepared, but I want to come here to speak tonight. I live directly across from the D section of the project. I've been a resident here in Scottsdale for 16 years, so that makes me an honorary local, a native, as you were. I'm excited about this project. I'm excited about what's going to happen to Scottsdale. I'm excited about everything going on down here. When we first moved here from Rancho Santa Fe, California, we moved to North Scottsdale. I had the audacity to move back up to a golf course, and nobody's ever accused me of being a golfer, but I attempt. When I saw the excitement going on in downtown Scottsdale, my wife and I decided to downsize and move downtown. The reason we did is because of the City Council, the decision, the planning. I followed the Planning Commission. I was at the Planning Commission meeting. I've been tracking what's going on with parking. Everything has been very transparent. And every time I turn around, it seems like there's confusion about what's going on. There isn't. It's almost as if we are feigning confusion. Everything that's going on is pretty plain, is pretty much up front, and I'm excited about it. My neighbors asked me, I live in Villa de Este. I was volunteered to come here to represent our neighborhood tonight, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that we are very much in favor of the project. I don't want to go negative, and I know that no member of the PAC wrote this article and some of the articles that have been popping up in the paper, but it almost reads like a direct threat to the politicians in this area who do a great job, and I don't like that. And they're not the only people who can form a PAC in this community. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Vivian. Next is Debbie Crawford, and she has some dedicated time from Randy Brown. Oh, all right, so it should have been led with yours. That's fine. There's not another card in here for you, Mr. Crawford, is there? Okay, yours just happened to be on the back side of this. Okay. All right, so Mr. Bill Crawford has dedicated time from Debbie Crawford and Randall Brown.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
And let me just start by saying I'll give 4 minutes.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. There's a lot of reasons that I'm here tonight, and there's a lot that can be said about this project. But you're going to hear about this project, both the pros and cons, from a lot of people in this audience tonight. I obviously support this project wholeheartedly. I have a long history in downtown Scottsdale. My wife Debbie and I have a long history with the Unger family. And, we all know that Fred brought forth some great projects to the city, as have previously been stated. Monumental projects like the Royal Palms, the Hermosa Inn, Southbridge. No one has ever regretted that these projects were built. And we all benefit because of those. We benefit because they contribute to our quality of life. Fred was a detail guy. He was passionate, and he wanted every single one of his projects to be perfect. Southbridge was his biggest dream, and he wanted this to be built with his whole heart and soul. And unfortunately, he's not here to do it, but I believe he's chosen someone quite capable of doing this. It's sad and disappointing to see some of the inaccuracies that have been stated in social media, in letters, in the press, not only about the Unger family, but about Carter, who's taken over this project. So when I first came here back in 1996, Fred was my first landlord. I was a tenant in their project, and they really helped me a lot getting started in this community. And I watched them help other tenants get through the recession. It's disappointing to see some of those people in opposition to this project, but that's the way that it is. I met my wife through Fred and Jenny. Fred was the best man at our wedding, and I spent probably 3 hours a week for 20 years working with Fred in my gym. So you get to know people when you have that kind of relationship. So now I want to talk about Carter, his son. And I'm going to tell you something about Carter that he will never tell you. Why? Because he's very modest. Carter grew up in a privileged family. He went to the international school in Switzerland, where he left with a degree in international relations. He could have gone into the private sector. He could have gone into the State Department. You know what he did? He joined the Army as a captain, as an officer. He was embedded behind enemy lines in Afghanistan. Spent 6 years in the Army. There's one instance that speaks volumes about his character. His men were pinned down under heavy fire. They couldn't get to the top of their vehicle to recharge their weapons. Carter ran across the field, drawing fire so they could reload and re-engage the enemy. He was wounded when an RPG landed nearby. He picked up shrapnel. For this, he received the Bronze Star. This is the kind of character of the man that's going to be leading this project. When he got home, he was assigned to a operation in Haiti right after the big earthquake, where he put in a water treatment plant by himself and donated his time so that they could drink. Then he joined the fire department in Chandler for 6 years. When it became evident that his father was terminal, Fred asked Carter to come and take over this project and shepherd his dream. Now, we all know that Fred had a lot of connections. In this world, he could have asked anybody in the development community to do this lift. He asked Carter because he knew that Carter had the integrity and the tenacity to protect his family's vision and do the right thing for Scottsdale. So I support this project, I support this family, and I support this man, and I hope you do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Next would be Alex McLaren, followed by Don Henninger.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Alex McLaren, 7624 East Osborne. It was in July 2018 that the City Council unanimously approved the Old Town Character Plan, which I supported. I wasn't here, but I remember going to a previous hearing, and that covers land use, character, design, mobility, arts and culture, and economic vitality. Southbridge 2 conforms to all of the elements of the Old Town Plan. And I think that the maps which the city staff showed, the different type areas that the projects are located in, demonstrate that. The pedestrian activities which are really stressed in the Old Town Master Plan are definitely a highlight of this project. There are significant infrastructure improvements which need to be installed, which are stipulated for the developer to install, especially sewer lines, which I think goes to show that the developer is needing to pay for those. There's not going to be any city money going into those. There's been a lot of talk about parking in the Old Town area. City did an Old Town parking study in 2015. Walker Parking Consultants. I would highly recommend that the city update that plan. I think Carter mentioned the economic impact of the project. In the council report, there is discussion of that, and the city hired an independent a third party to do the economic impact analysis for the project, and it is significant. Old Town is the economic engine for this area of Scottsdale, and I highly support this project. I hope you do too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLaren. Don Henninger. Be followed by Lorraine Rogers.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, thanks for your time tonight. You know, as a longtime newspaper man and a journalist, I value the facts and appreciate it when the facts and not the emotions or the opinions tell the story. We're hearing from a lot of people tonight, and there's a lot of emotional testimony here as well, and that's to be expected. So I'll be brief, and I'll let the facts tell the story from what I see about Southbridge 2. Fact, it is the brainchild of a local family with deep roots in our city, the Youngers, who have been planning this project for many years, a family with a proven track record of building iconic developments that are among the strongest properties in all of Arizona. Fact, Carter Unger has done his homework. He's been transparent in the process, meeting with anyone who has had questions or concerns, including the tenants who will be affected in the project, receiving overwhelming support from them for what he is planning. Fact, Carter Unger has assembled a solid team of investors and partners that assure he has the means and the support to get the job done right. Fact, the project conforms with the guidelines for development that the city has required. It's cleared through the design review process and the Planning Commission, both with unanimous approvals. Fact, it has wide-ranging support from leaders in the business, community, and civic sectors. If you base your decision on the facts in this case, then it becomes very clear that Southbridge 2 is most deserving of your approval tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Henninger. Lorraine Rogers, followed by Tamarik Sukar. Hope I've got that right.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Lorraine Rogers, and I've been a longtime resident of Scottsdale, lived in 5 zip codes, love them all, love the city. I especially am fond of downtown Old Town. It's the heart of our city, and I appreciate its amenities and its role in the economic vitality of the quality of life that we enjoy, especially. For the last 7 years, I've served on boards and commissions and the General Plan 2035 Task Force. I believe in and continue to support the integrity of the process in our city's government. Southbridge 2 is the right project at the right time. The project is well architected, fits the requirements and guidelines, as Alex McLaren mentioned before. It definitely conforms to the Old Town plan that you had a lot of outreach on. People understood what it was going to look like. It's amazing. And I think it's role model for the city. The Younger family, both first Fred and Carter, definitely had such amazing outreach. It was role model. They listened to people over a long period of time. They made changes appropriately. And they worked with all stakeholders, not only the residents, but all the people truly involved in affecting change, and change that's important for our city. I support Southbridge 2, and I encourage you to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. I'll try it again, Theramit Sukart. And please do correct me if I've got that wrong.
Yes, it's Tomarit Suchart. I go by Tommy, so makes it easier.
Did I have the last name right?
Yes, close enough. Suchart, yes,
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Mayor and council members and fellow citizens, for the opportunity to speak to you tonight about this development. So I was born and raised in Arizona. I left for education for a long time, for high school, college, graduate school, never thinking I would come back here. I felt that any other city offered a much more vibrant and culturally rich environment in which to live and eventually raise a family. Eventually, my now wife and business partner and I decided to move to Arizona, where we could create a positive impact. We chose to live in Scottsdale and eventually start a family in this city. When it was time to open up our own architectural office, we chose to purchase a building in Old Town Scottsdale because we saw and continue to see the potential of this part of Scottsdale and the valley to be a vibrant area. Old Town as it exists now is a quaint, charming area that is largely visited by tourists. However, it mostly is a sleepy and quiet area that does not thrive as a district of any sort. It could be so much more. Spring Creek's South Bridge extension represents a massive undertaking and a huge belief that Old Town has the potential to be the epicenter for Scottsdale. As an architect and urban designer, I fully support this development and all that it represents because we can see the potential of how such a significant investment would create a massive impact for the cultural and economic vitality of this area. It is a major game changer that needs continued support. There is the minority out there who have expressed that they don't want it to change from what it is now. They don't want change because they feel they will be left out, and they themselves have no vision nor care to fathom a vision of what that future can be. Certainly, in order to truly thrive and live up to its potential, Old Town cannot remain as a myopic vision of this minority, nor let insignificant short-term parking and traffic woes impact long-term benefits. Old Town needs this project to make a long-lasting positive impact for the city of Scottsdale. Council members, please support Spring Creek's development and be the council that creates a positive impact for generations to come and not be remembered for holding on to some outdated vision of the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Suchard. Next would be Elizabeth Shalinor. It should be followed by Eric Marvin.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I've been a resident of Scottsdale for the past decade, but more importantly, I own and manage a retail store on Fifth Avenue in the site designated as Site C. The Unger family have been my landlords for the past few years. They have treated me fairly, kindly, and I appreciate everything they have done. If this project is approved, it will certainly impact me financially in a negative way. I think that's probably true with most, if not all, of the other tenants. However, I'm here to tell you that I support the project. The buildings on Fifth Avenue are deteriorating, and as the daughter of a commercial real estate developer myself, I can tell you that bringing these buildings up to code would be cost prohibitive. Additionally, I believe that the drawings, the renderings, are beautiful, and they will improve our already charming little town and make it even better than it is right now. So I want to say thank you to the Unger family. Thank you, members of council. I hope you will approve the project.
Thank you, Ms. Chalinar. Mr. Eric Marvin will be followed by Tim Klug.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I will keep it brief. I and my family own several properties on Marshall Way. In the last year, we've purchased 3 commercial properties in the core of Old Town. And it's because Old Town is great. It has a lot of potential. It's walkable. It is interesting. But it can be better. And that is why we invested in Old Town. So I think everybody else has really articulated the benefits of this project. I agree with them. Let me communicate to you what I've heard from my tenants and potential tenants, and that is that they want this development. They want Scottsdale, Old Town Scottsdale, to be something more. They want it to be more verdant. They want it to be more intriguing. They want it to be more welcoming. And I think that this project accomplishes that. So please give it the consideration that it's due and approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marvin. Tim Klug will be followed by Janet Wilson.
First off, I'd like to thank the mayor and the rest of the council for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Tim Klug. I'm a captain paramedic for the Chandler Fire Department. I have been so for the past 22 years, and I've had the absolute honor and privilege of being Mr. Unger's direct supervisor for almost 2 years. He was with me shortly before he departed to care for his ill father. And I'm sure the terms honor and privilege sound a little euphemistic, but I'll explain in just a second. I felt compelled to speak tonight on behalf of Mr. Unger and behalf of the truth. When I read the things that were being written online and posted on social media regarding Mr. Unger's character, things like he's in it only for the money, only wants to maximize profits, cold, heartless, disgusting. Let me assure you, none of these are true. In addition to working for the fire department for the last 22 years, I also taught customer service for Mesa Community College for several years. However, in the short time Mr. Unger was with me, he completely and utterly redefined customer service. I watched him build a wheelchair ramp for an elderly patient of ours that was a frequent caller. There was no money, there was no maximizing profit, there was no glory. There was just simple human kindness. I watched him spend several $100s of his own money to buy 3 young children groceries after their mother had abandoned them. Again, no profits, no money, no glory, just simple human kindness. I watched as he ceremoniously lowered a tattered flag, American flag, in front of a World War II veteran's home and raised a new one. That simple act brought that veteran to tears, and he died 2 days later. Many times, these things, such as simple human kindness, are reduced to a cliche. Like, so-and-so is so generous, they'll give you the shirt off their back. Well, Mr. Unger actually did that. We had a call for an elderly female who was out to lunch with her friends. She experienced a syncopal episode. She lost consciousness. Unfortunately, she soiled herself. When she had come to and realized what had happened, she was mortified. We tried to the best of our ability to accommodate her. However, we didn't have any clothes or anything for her. Mr. Unger took the shirt off his back and gave it to her. So he didn't just give back her shirt, he gave her her dignity back. So if you truly want simply better service in a world-class community, I recommend Carter Unger. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Klug. Next is Janet Wilson. She'll be followed by Marilyn Atkinson.
Hi, my name is Janet Wilson. My family's been here since the 50s when my dad and my mom bought some buildings there, or bought the land. It was all dirt, so I go way back. And Fifth Avenue means so much to me. And, you know, Carter, hey, we're friends. I loved his dad. So it's not about that. It's not about personalities. I've been called a slum landlord because I'm next to a hotel that is, so the back and forths go both ways, guys. You know, we're getting clobbered and you're getting clobbered. But it's not about personalities. I loved Fred. Many meetings I went to with him. But my property is across the street from the Rose Garden. And then we have another building where Evo is. They will be directly affected by this. And my mom and dad and another couple started the Rose Garden. So I have deep roots here. It breaks my heart what's going to happen. The mass is so huge. And you made a stipulation or what, last night. We got it last night to go down 1 story. Do you think that will even make a difference, going down 1 story? The mass is so huge. I just can't even believe it. But I want to talk about my tenants. You know, I have tenants. Everybody says, well, the tenants are only there 5 years. We have huge turnover. No, my tenants have been there for 40 years. They're like family to me. And they mean a lot to me, and they say to me, what are we going to do, Janet? I get people every day, not every day, several times a month. I'll buy all your buildings. You know, well, our buildings are going to be worth a lot more because of this project if it's voted for. But it's not about us. We could sell out and go on our merry way. It's about the tenants. These people have been there for 40-some years, 20 years. They mean, if you vote for this, they come over from Gilbert, they come over from Chandler. They will no longer have businesses. Carter's going to lose 70-some tenants. I don't know how many are on my side of the street, but it's huge. So let's say it's 150 altogether. You guys are putting them out of their businesses.
Ms. Wilson, if you could wrap it up, it's
okay.
Your expired time.
But anyway, I just worry about all our businesses and everything. The mass is just so huge. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Marilyn Atkinson, be followed by Betty Janik.
Hi, Marilyn Atkinson. Been a resident of Scottsdale for 50 years. I have property in historic Old Town. We had a business there for 45 years. When I retired, the business was 71 years old. The reason I'm here tonight is because I want to talk about the parking. What we see happening with this project, because when we met with the developer, I'll give you an example. In the Rose Garden parking lot, it has currently 125 parking spaces. They're going to put 100 units in there. They're going to put 90 parking spaces in there. And then the balance, the 78 spaces, are going to be for the public. Well, if you're having 100 units, wouldn't you have 100 parking spaces? Then they talk about the hotel. There's 200 units at the hotel. There's 160 parking spaces. Now, you're going to have employees. Where are they going to park? So while we look at this and we see what's happening, for example, with the Rose Garden, it's being sold off. It's not being turned into a parking structure, which is what it should be. Here in historic Old Town, where my property's at, one of our parking lots was sold. So the developer, of course, at some point is going to want to develop that. And under the guidelines, the way they currently are, we have to stand up for parking. Even now with Carter's project, and I'm not saying anything negative about Carter's project, but I am saying you need to take a look at that and increase the parking. Otherwise, you're going to have a big mess down there. We already have a mess. So why add to it? And that's all I have to say, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Atkinson. Next is Betty Janik.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I speak on behalf of the Coalition of Greater Scottsdale, which includes hundreds, thousands of members. We recommend that the South Bridge project be continued to a later date. Carter had indicated that he was willing to consider some additional changes to the plan. Now, I'm not sure if what Jordan spoke of were those changes. What I heard is that there would be a reduction in the height of 3 buildings, increased walkability, and significant increase in public open space. And it seems to me that much of that has been addressed very recently. Okay? Now, what I do need to say is the project ushers in a significant and controversial change to the complexion of downtown Scottsdale. Unfortunately, none of us has a window into the future to guide our decisions today. We wish we did, but we don't. What we ask is that you follow proper protocol. There's been what seem to be very accommodating changes that were requested, but it should be put in writing. It should be reviewed by staff and citizens and city council, and then we can make an informed decision. And that's why we recommend that there be a continuance at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Janik. Next is Alexandra Inalbum. Please correct me if I've got that wrong. I've got a hyphen in there, so I wasn't exactly sure what to emphasize.
You got it pretty close. It's in Albon.
Okay,
so
thank you.
I'm going to be super brief. I was born and raised in Scottsdale, went to Scottsdale school districts from elementary to high school, went to Scottsdale Community College, went to ASU. So like many of you, I have seen the growth and the evolution of the city around Old Town. However, the direct area that Spring Creek will be developing, it could be a lot more. Like everybody that has kind of advocated for it has said, the live, work, play is something that is really an evolutionary thing, and they're going to bring that to Old Town. So that is what I think is something that Scottsdale is definitely lacking, and something that will bring residents to Old Town. So I support the project.
Thank you, Ms. Inalbum. Next is Kelly Wolf, be followed by Nick Metzger.
Good evening. I'm reading a letter on behalf of my friend Frederica Ranucci. Mayor and council members, I feverishly support the Southbridge 2.0 project. As a property owner on Marshall Way and Craftsman Court for more than 30 years, I believe it is imperative that Fifth Avenue undergo a dramatic upscale and forward-thinking revitalization. Southbridge 2.0 is the right project at the right time with the right vision for our beloved downtown. With the perfect mix of high-end residences, quality offices, and hotel guests to attract and support fine retail and dining establishments, this project will create a truly vibrant downtown destination that is long overdue. Many of the properties included in Southbridge 2.0 haven't been remodeled or upgraded in decades, appear old, tired, and run down. It is a disappointment, if not a disgrace, the lack of any significant improvements or investments in these properties, considering the special history of Fifth Avenue, which was at one time known for exclusive and sophisticated retail shops, before the cheap and tacky trinket stores of today that come and go. With your support, the Southbridge 2.0 project will deliver an unprecedented and necessary transformation of the Fifth Avenue area, while at the same time increasing tourism, boosting economic activity, and furthering many worthy city objectives as expressed through the new character area plan. Spring Creek Development has a reputation for impressive redevelopment, Southbridge, Royal Palms, the Hermosa Inn, and as a valued, trusted company dedicated to the enhancement of our community, it is sure to honor the character and the history of this once great Fifth Avenue neighborhood. Please vote yes. Thank you. Frederica Ranucci.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Next is Nick Metzger, followed by Ryan Smith.
Thank you for your time. First, I just wanted to say I have the utmost respect for the Unger family, Carter, Jose. Jose was actually our broker on our first deal. When my wife and I opened our gym Body back in 2014. So I know they took a chance on us, and I definitely know that they've done that for so many others in the Scottsdale community. So again, we can't express our gratitude there. I think the one concern that we do have as being a gym located on the far end of Site D is that's where all of our customers use for parking. So right now we have about 650 roughly people take a class with us every single day. So with that parking lot being removed, obviously that would put us out of business. He did say that there were 78 spaces that were going to be available for public use, which is great. However, again, the concern still is going to be how available will they be to us businesses that are there, as well as how are we going to be able to function throughout this entire process. Again, I don't have probably the knowledge to know what is right or wrong with this project. I trust in everything that they've stood for, from my knowledge of them, but as a business owner, obviously that's just my concern, so I wanted to express that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Metzger. Ryan Smith, be followed by Rod Sharenkos.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Just a couple of reasons why I want to say that I support the project. I've been in Old Town since I was growing up as a kid, high school, went to ASU. I've noticed the last 20 years of what's happened, or better yet, what hasn't happened, and sort of how things have been empty parking lots and underserved space. I think this project takes the momentum from the waterfront that had transitioned in the past few years, brings it to the other side of the canal to really finish off the area and not only bring tourism with the hotel, but also more residents that can live there with all the people that work across the street that are here with the tech industry, and really is a forward-thinking project. And the other thing I was going to mention was that this zone was actually designated as well by the Economic Development Council of Scottsdale as an opportunity zone, one of two zones in the entire city that need reinvestment based on census data. So this was approved at a state level and a national level as an opportunity zone where the project sits in full. So there's a lot of people saying this area needs reinvestment. I'm one of them. I hope you guys vote to approve this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Rod Shrengost, please correct me on that.
I must be in the wrong meeting. I came here to have some disagreement with some of the issues on the Southwood project, although I am a supporter, but I guess I came into a love fest for Carter Unger. I love him myself after all I've heard tonight, but as an opponent, I guess I get 6 minutes. Was that?
Yeah. All right. I did correct that, Rod. So, 2 minutes, and we're already starting.
My interest was the support of the canal and the waterfront. When the city of Phoenix decided to create a waterfront, improve the canal and create a waterfront, I think we had a lot of different kind of expectations.
I don't normally do this, but the city of Phoenix.
Okay, city of Scottsdale. I do live in Scottsdale. Okay. But I just thought the expectations for the canal was going to be different than just a walled-in channel of high-rise buildings. I guess I would have hoped that a project of this magnitude, which I do support, could have had some more enhancements. There are some nice enhancements for the canal, but a couple of years ago, the city of Tempe voted to improve their waterfront and create a lake. Everybody supported it. To many of your surprise, that lake is still there. You just can't see it anymore. It's walled off by high-rise buildings. They're going up rapidly on both sides. I was hoping that there would be lower buildings closer to the canal. That's my main concern. I bring my friends from out of town to the canal. We ride our bikes through downtown. You can see the town from the canal, from the trail system. You won't be able to do that as well when this is built. From the city, you can see the people along the canal hiking, biking, walking their dogs. You won't see them anymore unless you're in one side of one of the high-rise buildings looking down on the canal. So that's my main concern. I wish the canal had been given more consideration in this improvement.
Thank you, Mr. Sharenkos. Next is John Little, followed by David Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. John Little, 13952 East Geronimo. The height issue. That battle really got lost years ago. As everybody said, Scottsdale's changed. I think you're going to see more height. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. That's just the way it's going to be. Those aren't my words. Those are the prophetic words of Councilman Bob Littlefield at the time when he joined 6 of his colleagues on October 7th in 2003 to approve with the council unanimous approval of the Scottsdale waterfront project, doubling the height of downtown buildings at that time to 135 feet. Now, why did Councilman Littlefield and others at the time, David Ortega, Tom Silverman, who were on the council at that time, vote yes for that project, for that increase in building height downtown? Because even they could recognize a good project when they saw it, one that would help downtown. They wanted to turn perhaps the most valuable Christmas tree lot and pumpkin selling lot in the entire world to something that would add value to downtown. As you know, I've lived in Scottsdale and worked in Scottsdale for nearly 40 years. I've not only had a direct front row seat, but I've also been able to be part of the team that's brought projects forward in the city, including DC Ranch, Optima Camelview, the Hotel Valley Ho, Scottsdale Waterfront, Scottsdale Corridor, and, of course, Southbridge. And through it all, I've had the good fortune to have worked with Scottsdale's leading architects and urban planners and builders like David Hovey and Vern Swabeck and Ken Allen, Trevor Barger, Scott Lyon, Bill Nasikas, and Fred Unger. And it's crystal clear to me that Southbridge 2 stands shoulder to shoulder with any of those projects that I just noted. Spring Creek has presented you a project that meets and exceeds city requirements in every respect. It's consistent with and respectful of the downtown character area. It enhances pedestrian access, circulation, and open space. And when I served the city as the transportation general manager...
Mr. Little, if your time's expired, if you could wrap it up, please.
All right. I will merely say that I think that this is on par with a legacy project in Scottsdale, and I would encourage the council's support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Little. David Henderson, followed by Philip Weddle.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. My name is David Henderson. I moved to Scottsdale in 1995. Growing up in Tempe, it was always a treat when my family traveled to Scottsdale to frequent places like the Sugar Bowl, Goldwater's department store, and see a movie at the Kachina Theater. As the most western town, there was much to see and do that was different from where we lived. Over the years, and now that I work at a location near Old Town, I've noticed that just as I have aged, so too has Old Town Scottsdale. Notwithstanding some recent facelifts, most buildings reflect their age and are in need of an extensive makeover. A stroll down Fifth Avenue and nearby streets provides a glimpse of businesses in decline or perhaps uninteresting to new generations of residents and visitors to the area. Recent revitalization pertaining to multifamily dwellings, high-end hotels, retail, and office buildings surrounding Old Town serve as a stark reminder that it's time for an urban renewal of its core. Today's retirees and workers prefer to live near retail services, workspaces, and entertainment, suggesting that there be no better time than now for Old Town renewal. At present, there do not seem to be enough residents or office workers to support the businesses in the areas, and merchants may struggle because of it. Spring Creek Development has a proven track record of doing high-quality work, many of which have already been mentioned here. Their commitment to the community is widely known and valued. I have known the Unger family for over 25 years, and I believe they will honor the character and history of this once great neighborhood while bringing it up to date. Please support this project so Fifth Avenue can once again be known for the amazing and unique experience that it used to be known for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson. Next, Philip Weddle, followed by Jason Alexander.
Mayor Lane and members of council, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. I would like to state that our office, Weddell Gilmore Architects, we're a property owner that's approximately 100 feet west of the Rose Lane, or the Rose Garden property. So we're intimately familiar with this property and walk it every day as we're walking to restaurants and coffee shops in the area. We strongly support this project. We believe that this type of density and mixed-use development is essential for the vibrancy of downtown Scottsdale. I knew Fred Unger for many years as he was planning this project, and 25 years in the making. You know, you don't have an opportunity to make this kind of transformative project happen very often. Now is that opportunity, and I would urge you to strongly support this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weddle. Next is Jason Alexander, be followed by Andrea Alley.
Jason Alexander, and I support this project. I certainly have concerns, like everybody has, just about the scope and the size, because even if everything's perfect, it is such a big change for downtown that we should be concerned about it going right. I have more concerns about what if we don't do this? What happens to all the amassed properties? What happens to Old Town otherwise? And I've argued before you many times, let's not settle, and I still feel that way. But we have a very good offer on the table from a local developer with local roots and all the good reasons that Ms. Rose and many other people have attested to. I feel good about the offer on the table because I feel good about Carter Unger. In the very brief time I've known him, he's really come to impress me. And Carter and I did not start our relationship with an auspicious beginning. He actually tried to have me arrested at Westworld for protesting the Desert Discovery Center. But sometime later, I don't know, 6 months or a year or so later, we bumped into each other and both were just sort of like, hey, why don't we start over? And since that time, Carter has just impressed me as transparent, open, accessible, available, very down-to-earth, and very authentic. He cares so much about this project. That's so obvious. And I think that is going to be one of the X factors that helps this project get over the bumps. This is not perfect. It can't possibly be perfect, being so big and of such a grand scope. But I think with his goals and his vision and his roots in the community, he will help smooth out the edges wherever possible. There is too much good here to throw away. If we need to make some changes, some stipulations, the folks from COGS have suggested a continuance. Let's make this project work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Next is Andrea Alley. And Ms. Alley has got one dedicated time card from Jennifer Hall.
Thank you, Jen.
And 3 minutes then, please.
Great. Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Andrea Alley. We've heard a lot about the amazing history behind this project and its development team. I'm here to plead for the future of Scottsdale. Early this year, I read an article about a young developer pursuing an ambitious project at the waterfront that would change the fabric of Old Town. I was struck not only by his story, but by his unconventional approach to community outreach, transparency, and his sincere belief that he can create something great for the people of the city. I've spent the last year learning everything I can about the world of development and the city's processes, and these projects are much more complex than simple community preferences, but they can be made better when the community's requests are brought to the table. I've watched Carter achieve this with Southbridge over the past year, despite what a few critics want you to believe. Downtown Scottsdale is undeniably a tourist destination, but it's also the city's second largest employment hub, second only to the air park. We are no longer the sleepy little western tourist town that we once were. Our western character is a part of our history, and that should absolutely be protected in core areas. But it isn't the entirety of Old Town, nor is it the city's intention for it to remain that way. So my question to you now is this. If we say no to Southbridge, what exactly are we saying yes to? What does Scottsdale get by doing nothing? Mayor and council members, I ask tonight for you to say yes to Southbridge. Because when we say yes to Southbridge, we say no to stifling the future for my generation and that of my kids. This is a $750 million project, not some cheap, profit-driven, fast food-anchored iteration of Tempe Town Lake. This is a project of incredible future opportunity for the people of Scottsdale. When we say yes to Southbridge, we're saying no to the prolonged delay of the completion of our city's waterfront. When we say yes to Southbridge, we say no to losing more than $4 million in future annual tax revenue. When we say yes to Southbridge, we say no to the continued seasonal-only visitors and foot traffic that Old Town merchants see year after year. When we say yes to Southbridge, we say no to the continued stagnation of Old Town's relevance to our city in years, potentially decades when economic forces are considered, of lost revenue, progress, and growth. When we say yes to Southbridge, we say no to turning away world-class brands that uphold our reputation as a luxury destination for tourists. When we say yes to Southbridge, we say no to an uncertain future and owner of this property. When we say yes to approving this project, we say no to hypocrisy on the dais. In July 2018, 6 out of 7 of you voted unanimously to approve our Old Town Area Character Plan, which included the well-publicized height allowance of 150 feet and the knowledge that the city designated this area for exactly the type of development that's being proposed tonight. You did this with full knowledge that the land values skyrocketed to what 150 feet in height can bring to owners and buyers in these Type 3 zones. You are the reason that we sit here tonight in an epic battle of preserving what was versus building for tomorrow. If height scares you, you should have voted no back then. This project is not political fodder to build a base or generate hysteria, and it is shameful that it has been treated as such. It's an amazing move forward for our city, exactly as you intended it to be. This multi-generational legacy project is 25 years in the making, all leading to your vote tonight. Mayor and Council, nobody has to lose in order for us to win. I would not be supporting Southbridge 2 if I didn't believe to my core that Scottsdale will win too when this project is finished. I don't underestimate the weight of this decision tonight, and thank you for taking everything into consideration as you do. I have no doubt that Spring Creek will continue to work with the city and stakeholders to improve upon what's proposed here tonight. And finally, Carter, I never knew your dad, but most people in this room did. So whatever happens tonight, I know he's incredibly proud of how far you've taken his dream and his vision for the city that we call home and where we're raising the next generation of leaders. Thank you for your time and consideration. Please vote in support of the best future for Scottsdale and say yes to Southbridge too.
Thank you, Ms. Alley. Next is David Ortega. Mr. Ortega has one additional card from Bob Pejman. And so we will have 3 minutes then, David. And welcome.
Thank you. Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm speaking mainly to item 19. Item 19 calls for the termination of the agreement on Rose Garden. That action should have been taken 4 years and 4 months ago. The project started in 2005 when the Unger Group and Spring Creek pledged and signed a redevelopment agreement to provide 200 public parking spaces. Over the next 10 years, everyone in that area expected fulfillment of that because it is city property. However, approximately 2006, 2 employees who helped write that RFP went to work for Mr. Unger or Spring Creek directly as agents for him. In the next 6 years, they transacted extensions after extensions with the city. They and both parties admit today that Spring Creek did default. However, no default notice was ever issued. It should have been issued 4 years and 4 months ago. I have met with Mr. Unger as well, Carter, and I've told him they have no dibs on Rose Garden. Well, along the way, of those 2 employees, one went back to work for the city under the real estate department, and she would have been obligated to write a notice of default. That is standard real estate practice. You cannot have parties not perform for 10 years straight with 0 down payment, 0 carrying cost of public property. So if you lay that side by side with the procurement laws of Arizona and even the sale of property, it's not right. And I bet you there's 20 or 30 realtors or brokers and bankers who will tell you that this transaction cannot go forward. You're placing basically a time bomb in this whole thing. Unfortunately, by having a insider at the city, by not transacting that, what happened is the property was withheld from public discussion for 4 years and 4 months. As far as we knew, and Janet and others, there was going to be public parking there. It wasn't going to be sold, and that discussion wasn't given chance to in a public forum. It was also not shown that, so this is why I'm saying you cannot, if you do vote for the Rose Garden sale, you are just providing something that's going to sink the whole project. You cannot have a defective sale with the wrong transaction of public property in this manner. I believe you should continue. I believe you can do the forensic on it. I'm not making any accusations. The fact is that those proper paperwork were not done, and that places the entire project in jeopardy. And frankly, it leads to major questions about the competence of the city in this transaction.
Mr. Ortega, if you would wrap it up, time has expired.
I will just add that in the past I have supported Fred and Jennifer on the original South Bank, and I did so twice as a DR board member.
Thank you, Mr. Ortega. The next is, and I'm sorry, I cannot read this. Hey, can you help me with that?
Jorge Gonzalez?
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I can see it now. Yes. Mr. Gonzalez, please, is next, followed by French Thompson.
Thank you, Council, for this chance to talk on this project. I have been a realtor in the city of Scottsdale for 40 years. I own property in downtown Scottsdale and on the outside of Scottsdale over in Midtown. I have been a realtor, like I said, for over 40 years in this area and been involved in different developments over the years, in the past years. I've also worked for the architectural company that worked and built most of the Civic Plaza. The one problem that I have is not with the project itself, but only on Rose Garden, item number 19. It's not that I don't see a good project coming forward, but I don't like the process. I was familiar with the process of Rose Garden back in 2003, 2005, and it has changed and evolved into something that is way beyond what was reasonable at that time period. That project in 2003 was completely different than what's proposed now. I just would like to see a little bit more time given to this sale of this property. Looking just at the values of it, given at the $8 million sale, I would really kind of question if that's really a good value. The thing is, I realize with government, because I've served on commissions and boards on this in the city, that not the actual sale, but the money that is generated for the coffers of the city of Scottsdale is going to be there. But the thing is that we need money. The city needs money. We've had these bond proposals and everything. We finally got all that through. We need to make sure that we're accurate and going forward in a proper manner. This project could go without Rose Garden. It's not necessary part of this piece. It can work without it if we had to, but who knows? But without a good forensic look at this, I'm just afraid of what might get past our hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Next is French Thompson. He'll be followed by Jesse Washad.
Good evening, Mayor Lane, City Council members. Well, I'll tell you what, I feel like I'm at a funeral. Carter just got a eulogy from some of the coolest people in town. I fell in love with him myself, too. I'm not against this project. I'm against this project the way it is. I think it's way too big. I think the height is just out of character with the rest of the downtown. I know these are legal bonuses, but my understanding is to get these bonuses, money has to exchange hands or other things have to happen to be able to get it. I think that this is really out of character with the downtown. You know, the buildings that are there that are going to be demolished have languished for years, but that's on purpose because it was going to be bulldozed in the first place. I mean, there was never any intent of upgrading those buildings and making those buildings better. I totally understand it. They bought it to bulldoze it. I just honestly think that there's issues with this project still. There's been some compromises. I think that's awesome that Carter's doing that and the rest of the people are doing that. There's a huge amount of people working together to make this happen. City staff, city council members, but I request that there be a continuance where you seriously consider that this really is underparked. If you're bringing in that many people, you really need to have a whole lot more parking places. If you want to say, look, in 10 or 15 years, people aren't going to be driving cars, but I'm going to guess that every one of you council members drove here in a car. I'm going to guess everybody in this audience, none of them came here on a scooter. Honestly, one guy, hey, I like that. Anyway, I just think that this still could be worked on because those buildings need to be bulldozed. That was the intent when they were being purchased, and I think that downtown can be improved. I think that there's some great things that could happen. I just think that the parking and the density of it is really out of character with what we can do in the city of Scottsdale. So I know I'm not going to change anybody's mind. I just would like to see this thought out even further. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Next is T.J. Clausen. Sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, Jesse? Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Next in line was really actually Jesse. You want to wait then until after him? Okay, go ahead then, please. Let me catch up on that. You've got 2 additional cards, so I'll give you 4 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Mayor and council members, I appreciate your time this evening. My name is T.J. Clausen, 7144 East Stetson Drive. I'm reading on behalf of Steve Johnson with Adelaide. Steve owns a building at 4242 North Craftsman Court and could not be here tonight. Steve asked me to read the following. I own property on Craftsman Court where I live and run my business since 1999. I've walked my dogs daily through these streets. I've met thousands of tourists, hundreds of merchants, many property owners, and all levels of city employees around here over the past 20 years. I feel I have listened to a good cross-section of opinions on the area and have experienced firsthand the pluses and minuses of the decisions the mayor and city council has made over the years. This is what I do know. If you don't have a plan, things stay stagnant and have a high probability of failure. I am proud of the fact that I've had my business for over 20 years in the same location. Unfortunately, I'm one of only a handful of businesses in the entire downtown area that can say that they have lasted this long. This is not a good statistic for the city to be proud of, and I feel the lack of planning on the city's part greatly contributes to the situation of high failures around the area. Scottsdale's general plan was passed in 2001, and the amendment of 2019 still has not passed. At this point, we're dealing with a 20-year-old vision. The Old Town Scottsdale Character Area Plan was originally adopted in 1984, updated in 2009, and again in 2018. The lack of planning and not keeping current with the strong vision and trends leaves Old Town and downtown in the dust. This area of Scottsdale still struggles with what it should call itself. On the city's very own website, the Old Town Scottsdale Character Area Plan literally states it was formerly called the Downtown Plan. What is it? From a meeting I attended last week put together by Councilmember Whitehead, this conflict became glaringly apparent. There were 30 people who voiced their opinion on the South Bridge 2 project. It was an eye-opening for me to experience. Again, as my 20 years boots-on-the-ground experience tells me, I can honestly say 99% of the people I interact with support this project. I will call I will call this group the downtown contingents. On the other side, the Old Town contingents opposed the project. I can say I did not recognize them as any of the business owners around here. I do not know how the group was pulled together or what the true cross-section of people was. I can also say that most of the people against the project prefaced it by saying that they were against the City Council's decision on the 150-foot height allowance, so therefore they are against the project. The argument doesn't hold water for me, since this is not what we are deciding here. And development design requirements, which were written by city staff and passed by the mayor and city council. I also heard there is too much glass and concrete. Again, that is not what we are deciding on here. That portion of the project hasn't even begun to hit the drawing boards. What we are deciding on is whether or not the city will allow this development to be one of the first to follow the city's own new vision. I can understand how this does not sit well with people who do not want to change, but again, that is not what we are deciding here. I feel we can and should have both a downtown Scottsdale and an old town Scottsdale. It is important for our history and important for our future survival. Otherwise, we will continue to see shops around here open and close, and people that have invested their life savings lose it all because our elected leaders did not have a vision and did not give the downtown the attention it deserves. This core area of Scottsdale, whatever you want to call it, is long overdue for attention and needs the support of the city to follow through with a new character area plan that it has passed. Southbridge 2.0 is vital to make this a reality. It is a small part of this area, but will have significantly positive impact for years to come. Please vote yes on Southbridge 2.0.
Thank you, Mr. Clausen. Next is Jesse Washad. He'll be followed by Paula Sturgeon.
So it's Jesse Westad, 8347 East Mackenzie Drive. Mayor, council members. So like Carter, spent some time in the Army, six and a half years. But different than Carter, I actually had a job in the Army. I was enlisted, so I know he was an officer. They kind of signed our paperwork. When I got out, you kind of feel lost and you don't really know where you're going. And I even took some fire science classes. I had a pretty good teacher in the back that was up here earlier than me. Probably doesn't remember. That was back in like 2006 or something. But you're just kind of trying to find yourself. And I ended up going to grad school for landscape architecture, and that's what got me into the design world. And ended up with Kimley Horn, worked in Miami, worked in Atlanta on the Atlanta Beltline project, and worked on some amazing projects. No matter where I went and what projects we worked on, you know, change is kind of a dangerous thing. People fear it. And even in the best case scenario on the Atlanta Beltline, there was a lot of people that were against it. And, you know, I ended up moving to Scottsdale when I got out and living at St. Tropez, living the dream. And unfortunately in 2009, the market went down and all of our parents forced us to buy houses since they were so cheap at that time. And that's when I bought my house over on Indian School in Granite Reef. And I love my neighborhood. I know everybody around me. Everybody's super personable. And, you know, I've got Donnie behind me. I've got Pete in the back corner. My buddy Joe bought the place across the street. And I've had many people move in that same area. And just being in the design world and, you know, this project isn't probably going to be as cool as it could be because, you know, I'm not doing the landscape architecture on it. But it's still going to be a really amazing project. And the amount of canals that we have here in the valley, if you took Venice and Amsterdam and added them up, we have more miles than canals, but we kind of turn our backs to it. And what this project does is start putting that as our front door, and it becomes a beacon and becomes like what it could be and what it should be in the design world and here in the valley. So I'm excited for this project. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Westhead. And last but not least, Paula Sturgeon.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the Council. I'm Paula Sturgeon. I'm a 55-year resident of the city of Scottsdale. I have a very dear friend. Upon hearing about another friend's architecture of their home, said to me, "Girl, it's so ugly I literally lit my hair." Well, lit my hair is my new favorite phrase. There's a lot of hair on fire in our city right now. Everything that could possibly be wrong is wrong to somebody or somebody else. I want to take you back, though, to a time long ago that many of you won't remember, but I'll bet Councilwoman Littlefield and Cordy will for sure remember, when Goldwater's and Fashion Square was an open-air mall. Open air, oh yeah. And then they came along with the idea to enclose it, and hair went on fire throughout the land because it was destroying the character of Scottsdale. We had an open-air mall, and we didn't want any darn roof, even when it's 115 degrees. And then they built Los Arcos Mall, and oh my God, what's going to happen to downtown Scottsdale? Everybody's going to take their business way down south. And, you know, son of a gun, we've lived through that. And then everything was going to die because we were going to build the waterfront. I'm telling you, when I grew up where the waterfront's located, my parents bought a car. It is the nature of this city to be ever evolving. The minute we sit on the status quo, we lose every ounce of cachet that the previous leaders of this city have worked so diligently to create. The minute we start to buy the negativism and overlook what positive things we can make happen in this city, we then and only then, will we have lost the character of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sturgeon. And that does complete the public testimony on it here for now. And so we will proceed with questions from the council and discussion. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. So we do need to hear from the applicant. So if you'd like, please go ahead and respond. I know there's been some time on the front end, but nevertheless, if you'd like to respond to any of the things that have come up, certainly.
Thank you very much. There were a few things that I think will be cleared up, and certainly there's better suited people like your amazing new city attorney and my attorney on those issues. But one I just wanted to quickly clear up was I truly believe a misstatement. And I believe Patty suggested we were going to have 90 parking stalls on Site D for the 100 units. And I just want to give a correction, and I know her, it was purely accidental. But we're going to have 160 below grade parking spaces, and then the 78 at grade tuck under that'll be for the public parking. And then I'm happy and excited to answer any and all questions you all may have.
Okay. Well, very good. Jordan, do you want to add anything to that?
No, Mayor and members of the council, I just wanted to say thanks to the overwhelming support that came out tonight for the family and for the team, and thank you, council, for working with us, because I think, just as Carter said, every single suggestion that you all made, whether you're for or against ultimately, was taken into account, and it's made the project much better.
Thank you. All right, then. We are then ready for some comments from our council and to create the discussion, if there's discussion to be had, and, of course, deliberations, and then ultimately a decision. So, and I know that Councilman Phillips loves taking this role, so I'm glad that he's taken the lead on this. And Councilman Phillips.
Well, again, everybody's waiting for somebody else to push first, so I'll go first. So number one, Mr. Carter, you know, you were passed a large baton by your father, and I don't think many people would have wanted to take over that role. I mean, it's a huge responsibility, and I think you and your team that have come up with this project have done a marvelous job, an amazing job. I know you've worked very hard for it, and so you got to give you credit for that. I mean, you have really done an amazing job. Gentleman that brought up about the Rose Garden, I kind of agree with that. That should have been forfeited 4 years ago. And my problem with that is if we terminate it now, then we really should put it out to bid.
because we never gave it the chance to go out to bid. We're going to terminate it and give it to somebody right away, and I think that's in a violation. So, looking at this to me, and this has really been a long-standing argument, I guess, with people in Scottsdale, is how you want your downtown to go. You know, I got in the council because I was an advocate of tourism. I thought Scottsdale was a tourism city, and the more tourism we get, the better, more money we'll get. They pay our taxes, all that. But the other side of the coin is, well, people would rather have business in here because business is more of a steady money flow, and that's what they want to have. So when I see business and residential coming into our downtown, I kind of see that as an encroachment of tourism. I can see that what's happening here is we're going to become a business and residential downtown, much like Phoenix, which is great for the city. So the city government doesn't care as long as that money comes rolling in. You always get that money flow. But I feel like we're going to lose our tourism. I feel like our downtown, that's what it's all about. And when you lose one street, it's easy to lose the next one and then the next one, and then pretty soon it's all gone. I mean, we've seen this throughout Scottsdale, you know, from, you know, Rawhide and in every western thing we've done. We still call ourselves the most western town. We're going to end up with one block, one little corner with one little cowboy and say, see, we still have something here. But we're losing our tourism, and I'm a tourism person. And I'm afraid that this building is slowly going to take away tourism. I don't think it's really going to enhance tourism. I don't think people are going to come to see your building because it's for business and it's for residential. I know you have shops along the bottom, but that's mainly what it's about. And, you know, by your own admission, we're going to double the traffic. You know, Scottsdale downtown is not even a square mile. We have Scottsdale Road. Everything else is arterial. We're going to double the traffic. If anybody's been around here at 4 or 5, 6 o'clock heading north on Scottsdale Road, it's a nightmare. I can't even imagine that being doubled. But these people that are going to come into these businesses and the people that are going to live there are just adding all that traffic. And then where are they going to come in at? Fifth Avenue? So you're going to put a light at Fifth Avenue so these people can get in and out. It's going to be backed up for a mile. Because what else are you going to do? Like, I guess we could put a roundabout there, try to get the flow going that way. But honestly, I just don't see it. I love the project. I mean, there's so many great things about it, but it's the density of it. You know, if it was 6 stories, great. I love hotels. I love the hotel part of it. But we're just bringing too many people downtown that are living and working there. They're not really playing there. This won't be helping tourism. The tourists are going to come down here and go, we don't have anywhere to go. And then they just won't come here anymore. And you see this all across the country. You know, you start out with a nice little place and everybody goes there, and then business comes in and they start building their bigger buildings, and then the tourists say, well, this place is gone, we'll go somewhere else. You can see that in Honolulu. I mean, that's just, nobody goes there anymore. And I don't want to see that happen in our downtown Scottsdale. I'm not going to sit here and preach to you. This is my view. This is how I look at it. So I wouldn't be able to support this one because of the Rose Garden. I think should go to bid, and because I think this project is too massive. Thank you.
Mayor and Councilman, if it's appropriate, I can respond to some of those questions.
I know it wasn't phrased as a question, but yes, if you'd like to.
Okay, thank you. I would mention that the way that the Rose Garden was characterized, I think, is inaccurate. You can certainly ask your legal counsel. That agreement expired in 2015, and they've gone through all appropriate city code legal processes to do what they're doing tonight. Secondly, I think the applicant feels very strongly about understanding the impact on tourism from this particular project. The entire ground floor is retail and restaurants. And that hotel alone will support 52,000 nights a year, which is 100, if there's 2 people in the room, that's 100,000 new tourists to this area that are going to be in those shops and be able to support that. Carter feels very strongly that his 72 tenants right now, they just don't have the traffic to stay there for long term. They're turning over very quickly, and that's really unfortunate, and this will allow that. So the tourism, we are hopeful that the tourism will be improved. And if the council would like us to address the traffic, we have our traffic consultant here from CivTech, if that's helpful in any way.
Well, thank you for that, but I still think the Rose Garden should go out to bid, and I do think the traffic is going to be a nightmare.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Since we're not really, no one's rushing to the button, I'll pick up something that I normally do toward the close. All right, okay. Councilwoman Millhaven.
Wow. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Any of you who've been to council meetings for big zoning projects know that sometimes it can be a very challenging night. But I am inspired by everybody who showed up tonight. All ages, everyone's a stakeholder in our community, whether you own a business downtown or you own a property downtown. Thank you for coming out to speak. When I speak to community groups and they talk about how can I get involved, I often tell them we hear from people when they don't like things, but we rarely hear from people when they do like things. And so please, whether you like it or don't like it, we need to hear from you, and especially if you like it. And so, wow, I counted 22 of you stood up here and said this is going to be an amazing thing for our community. And so you have all inspired me to say, wow, there is a part of our community that is excited about what we're doing, about what the future can be, that there are people talking about the kind of a community we're building for the next generation, for your children, and you're weighing in and having your voice be heard. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You all inspire me. As you can tell, I'm also very excited about this project. I had to laugh when Paula spoke. I was thinking, when my family came here in the early 70s, it was a car dealership. Then it was empty. Then it was, I could very nicely call it a nightclub, but it sort of would be stretching it. It was a disco. I think I snuck in before I was legal. I'm not sure. So it was not a very nice place. Then it was an empty lot. Then I grew up and my office was across the street, and I watched them bulldoze the buildings that were there and work on the canal, and wondered if in my lifetime that would be developed to be something we could be proud of. And I'm so excited to see what's already been done there, and I'm excited to see what more is going to be done there. We did a downtown study that says what currently exists in our downtown is not sufficient to support our downtown, and we need to have more people who live and work in the area, and I think this is exactly what this project does. I'm as sad as many of the people to say that those low-slung buildings, which now in the holidays with the lights going across Fifth Avenue, are so charming. I'm sad to see them go, but the harsh reality is that those businesses do go in and out. My office is in the area, and I go down there for lunch, and the tourists want to know where everybody are. And so while it's charming and sweet and I'm going to miss it, and my folks thought a big night out was to go to Trader Vic's and get all fancy and go downtown, that's gone too. And so I think we have to recognize that that's gone, and this is just an exciting project. So I'm sure my colleagues will have other comments to make, but since I am enthusiastic, I would like to make a motion. And let me get to the front of my council report. So I want to make a motion for 2 items, right? Or for all of them. So, it's a lot of stuff here. Let me go back to the beginning.
One thing that we, pardon me, Councilwoman, I think we need to consider both items.
That's what I was looking for. We need 19 and 20 and name all the ordinances.
Because they're dependent upon one another.
Let me
I
pull
thought you
this
were
up.
choosing between the items.
No. I was saying I found the second and I was looking for the first. Sherry wants to speak?
Yes, go ahead. City Attorney Sherry Scott.
Forgive me, Mayor, but I believe you already have a motion pending on item 19. I believe that was seconded. Is that correct?
Never received a second.
It never received a second. Okay. I do have one thing that I want to remind the council about, because the applicant had agreed to amend the project. If you're making a motion to approve the project, I would ask that you keep in mind that if you want to accept those amendments, the motion will have to include that. And it can simply be as amended in the posted materials for this item in the memo dated December 3rd, 2019 from Tim Curtis to the Mayor and Council, including that memo's attachments. So that's just a housekeeping matter that I wanted to make sure about.
All right, great. And I think I found it. So I'd like to make a motion to adopt item number 19, the Rose Garden Termination Agreement, to adopt Resolution 11660, authorizing contract number 2119-203 COS, the termination and release of the development agreements. Item number 20, find that the planned block development overlay criteria have been met and determine that the proposed zoning district map amendment is consistent and conforms with the adopted general plan, and adopt ordinance number 4422 approving a zoning map amendment. Adopt resolution 11570 declaring Southbridge 2 development plan to be a public record. Adopt resolution 11577, resolution number 11578, resolution number 11579, and resolution number 11646 to abandon multiple alley and other rights of way to allow development. Adopt resolution 11576, authorizing development agreement number 2019-164 COS. Adopt resolution 11649, authorizing Rose Garden real property purchase and sale agreement, contract number 2019-119 COS. I think that's as amended in the posted materials.
Now, Ms. Scott, do we have the amended language associated with the appropriate resolution? Or do we just tag it on at the end?
You just tag it on to the end because it dealt with a variety of resolutions. And I may have misheard one of the numbers, but I want to clarify for the record that that motion included resolution number 11575.
Right. I think that was actually indicated as 1170 or 11570. I think it was. I think that's what I heard. So it might be in there in error, or maybe it was simply missed if you don't have the other one.
So just to get that clarification.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah. Thank you.
And then for the record, as amended in the posted materials for this item in the memo dated December 3rd, 2019 from Tim Curtis to the Mayor and Council, including that memo's attachments. Correct?
That's right. Thank you.
Right. So I think that does it.
I'll second that then, please. And I've got a couple of comments I'd like to make on this, because I think some of the things that were said, even though a lot of praising has been going on, I was not initially as enthusiastic as certainly as Councilwoman Milhaven is right now, and maybe she's come to this too, but nevertheless, there were certainly things that I was concerned about, and I know that Carter and his representatives know that. But they didn't surround anything with regard to the personality or the emotions of the younger family. It certainly was just simply the fact that there were elements that we have worked out. And just so that the population, the general population knows, we go through a series of what we call executive sessions. And they are confidential sections that we are sworn, frankly, by, and we're advised every time we meet that we're not to speak outside the room about what is discussed in guidance given to our city manager and, frankly, our charter officers with regard to negotiations. And the founders and on the state level found this a reasonable and appropriate way. This is the only time that we ever are not in open session in our discussions and our deliberations. And that is really, we don't take votes. It's a guidance issue. And the reason for it is simply that we do not want to put the citizens and the taxpayers' money in jeopardy by letting those parties, not that we're adversarial all the time, but nevertheless, those parties that may be vying for their own financial position, which is going to be run counter to the city and the taxpayers' position, that we don't show our hand. So I just want the public to know that that is why we have those kinds of sessions. They're sanctioned under law. Not only are they sanctioned under law, but we are violating the law if we disclose what goes on in those sessions, because we put the taxpayers' money at risk by disclosing information that could play to the favor of someone we're negotiating with. But I did want to mention, I wanted to give that precursor to it, because I did want to mention we have met no less than 6 times on this particular project with guidance to the city manager and the legal department and others as to what we felt were interesting issues that we needed to address. Some were out and out things that we were adverse to. Some things we needed modification to. And through those 6 times, and I think you would fully admit that wasn't always, just kumbaya. But at the same time, we were able to facilitate a good bit of what you see today. And I've come to conclude that it is a good product and it's a good project. And I think we're secure in a number of areas that we weren't previously secure in. One of them simply was the financial progress, the financial setting, the protection of the community on the overall, the closure of roads, traffic flow, underground parking under a right-of-way, which would complicate the project and frankly shut down roads for long periods of time. Just a multitude of things. And we've done this over the last several months, nearly a year probably now. And so I just want to say that during that process, we made great progress and we're at a place. Is there no risk of any problem with a project of this size? And that's one of the reasons we were so conscientious about what we had to do with it. Sure, there is. I've been in construction and I've never dealt with anything this complicated. And that's why it is big business, and it is an issue that we have to make sure that we've got a great staff, which we do, and a city manager who is really cognizant of those pitfalls sometimes when you're working with something like this. Don't want to go on too much more about this except to say it's a good project now. I feel good with it. I'm in alignment with all those people that spoke toward the attributes of it. Now, is everything perfect for everybody? Absolutely not. But the problem we had in this case, after all of that time, just late last week, an email went out with either old information or misinformation, and it got the entire thing fired up into a quandary where it otherwise was moving along well. So I'm disappointed that that kind of thing happens, but I'm not so naive to know that it doesn't happen. People are motivated by different things, and sometimes it's just simply a mistake. But in any case, I wanted to just mention that in my second, that I've not always been here. And I feel very good about it, and I think you all should, and I'm hoping and praying, frankly, that it'll all come to fruition in a timely manner and will be for the betterment of downtown and Old Town Scottsdale. So that's my second, and I enthusiastically at this point in time endorse that. Oh. All right, Councilwoman Whitehead.
Thank you, Mayor. I also just want to thank everybody for coming. I have spent close to a month out in the community meeting with people. So I will say that overwhelmingly today the people are supporters, but there's plenty, I wouldn't say it's a minority of people who don't support, but I would say most people are somewhere in between. And as far as the love fest for Carter, who wouldn't? I have thoroughly enjoyed working with Carter. I think he's a wonderful person. I had the pleasure of meeting his father. At the end of the day, the council has to review the contract, so it's not about trust, it's not about honor, it's not about the person, it's about the contract that we have, because we represent the constituents' interests, the contract between the city and the developer, which is Carter Unger. That has been evolving rapidly to the developer's credit. I think the project today versus the project last week is much more to my liking. He took very seriously concerns that I listed on publicly, but they're not yet addressed. There's a couple of problems I have. One is that we are obligated to give the public 10 days to review anything that we vote on. And I think there's, legal ways to not do that. And that's where we're at today. The height of one building changed, I think, in the last 48 hours. There's a difference in what staff, I met with 5 or 6 or 7 people from our staff last week, and the information that I have from them based on the stipulations and the DA and the information I have from the developer, there's a lot of disagreement there. I'm not quite sure what I'm working on and what I'm voting on. I'll give you a couple examples. There's an public right-of-way from Stetson Road to 6th Street. I do have a verbal commitment from the developer that will turn into a nice interior pedestrian path, but I don't have that. That is not what we have on the staff side. There's a big question on open space. I went back and I watched the July 2nd meeting of 2018. That is where the City Council 7-0 voted to go ahead and make 150 feet available. But it was stressed at that time that the developer would have to earn that. And open space was talked about a lot in that meeting. Sonny Kirtley had asked for that to be defined. It wasn't. But I agree with her that there had to be a trade. So when we have on the development side talking about 30+% open space, but when I sit down with staff, I'm seeing about 2%. This needs to be clarified. I can't vote on something unless I know for sure what I'm voting on. And let me tell you where I think some of the differences are. Sometimes there is open space, but it's not publicly protected open space. So it might be open, but it doesn't have an easement, a perpetual easement that means you and I can go on at any time we want. I think there's some talk about the canal as open space. Well, the canal is open space, and it's open space whether this gets built or not, because it's not part of the project. Carter is offering to do a lot of upgrades, even to open space on the north side, which has nothing to do with this project. I respect that, but I don't consider that part of the open space. So I do want some clarity. I was at the meeting and I rewatched it. We're going to have heights. I definitely support reinvestment. I support a lot of the concepts that Carter presented. I like a lot of the things. I also share many of the concerns. I think both sides have legitimate concerns. Both sides have legitimate love for this town. So it's always disheartening when people are saying bad things about each other versus focusing on the issues. But we're 2 days out from learning that the heights change. I have no idea how that affects parking. So I'm not ready to vote yes, but I would be supportive of a continuance.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Clapp.
Well, as the Mayor mentioned, there's been a lot of discussion about this case over the course of the last number of months, including some executive sessions. And the Planning Commission meeting took place in the summer. It's been quite a journey since then to try to resolve some issues that were still involved, some concerns with the project that was still involved with the Southbridge too. So my concerns were similar to some that I had heard from people in the immediate area. So I've spoken to the applicant and I've spoken to the business owners in the area over the last week or so, and it came up to three primary concerns that I was hearing: height of the buildings along the canal, particularly in Site C, also parking, as well as the impact on the merchants in the area. I have been a merchant myself, so I have good knowledge of how construction can impact the business owners in any area where there's a project of this size. So I want to thank the applicant for taking the reduction of the two buildings along the canal to 129 feet and 139 feet. I think that was a good change. And I should point out, when they made that change, they agreed to not change the parking that they were going to provide on the project. Could be easy enough to reduce the amount of parking they were providing because they've taken out a number of units on two buildings, but they're not doing that. The bottom line means that has freed up 65 more parking spaces than were available before they removed those floors. So somebody said, what does it mean to take those floors off? Well, not only does it reduce the visual element of the buildings, but it also provides more parking in the area for the project. So I think those are good benefits. And also, they have provided assurances that both lanes of Fifth Avenue will remain open, because I heard from the merchants very legitimately. They were afraid that the traffic was going to be impeded, probably go down to one lane, and people would not be able to get through to their businesses. And so they have, in writing, said that there will be 2 lanes of traffic at all times. They also have put in writing, because we discussed the impact of small businesses trying to get their customers in the door, and the driveway gets cut off or the parking space gets cut off. And so their assurance is that they will at all times provide public access to all the businesses that are going to be impacted on the other side of the street from the project. And finally, I talked to them about the impact on their own tenants. I've been a tenant with a landlord. I've been moved 3 times in a shopping center, and every time it had a significant impact on my business. So I sympathized greatly with the business owners that are in the area and their fears that their businesses are going to be impacted or closed. And so I believe with the assurance that they are going to provide a plan to the tenants for relocation. They're going to communicate to the tenants. Yes, this was only done in the last couple of days, but it's in our materials, as well as the height reduction and all the other written agreements that they made. Now, we could have made all of this statement here at the dais tonight and had to write into the documents tonight, and we've done that on the council. We don't give 10 days notice. We do it at the dais, which is really a bad idea. So the fact that they wrote it into the agreements and into the contracts ahead of time before tonight is the best way to do it, so we can see it in writing. We know exactly what we're voting on. And so for all those reasons, I was uncomfortable with this project only a couple of weeks ago, after having talked and found ways to overcome objections, basically, which is what you need to do is talk about what you're concerned about and find out if you can come to resolution. I think that's our job. I think that's what we're here for, to try to move the needle and get the best project we can possibly get and not try to impede it. So for that reason, I will be voting for the project.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I've got an indication. Okay, it's from Randy Grant, but yeah, it indicates you're now the city treasurer.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I do want to address a couple of issues that Councilwoman Whitehead had raised for clarification. The first is the open space. You were correct in saying that the canal open space was going to be provided regardless, because they can only build on their property. I believe what they were saying was they were doing improvements to the canal open space that are above and beyond what would normally be required for adjacent development. So it's not a lessened amount of open space, but it is a change in the quality of the open space, an increase in the quality of the open space. The second issue was regarding what's referred to as Unger Way, which is the connection between 6th and Stetson. And that has been discussed very recently. And the agreement that was made was that it would be provided for vehicular access, because the TEMA, the traffic mitigation analysis that was done, indicates that it is necessary to do that in order to manage the traffic, particularly for the office component of this development. So it would be open for vehicular development. It could be closed off for pedestrian only, particularly at those times when the office demand is lowered, in the evenings or on weekends, when the traffic would not require that it be maintained for vehicular access. So I just wanted to make those clarifications, that as they were late changes in the negotiations.
Yeah, so I have another question. The public right-of-way from Stetson through 6th, will we continue to have a public pedestrian path through there?
There will certainly be a pedestrian path. It will not be exclusively pedestrian, particularly during the time when the office component is active.
And I'm not talking about Site B. I'm talking about the path through Site A.
Yes, that will be maintained as public access.
Okay.
Yes.
So that was not when I met with staff. Okay, thank you for the clarification update.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Vice Mayor Littlefield.
Thank you, Mayor. I will not be supporting this tonight.
Old Town is a very small, very compact area, only a few blocks in size. To cram this much density and height into this small area will destroy its very character. It would remove the atmosphere and the Old Town Western flavor that tourists come here to find. Our Old Town attracts thousands of visitors every year, and they go to Old Town, and they want to savor that Old West flavor, enjoy the atmosphere, and they shop in the stores, in the shops there. These stores are not going out of business. I do not want to turn Old Town into any town, USA, anywhere, USA. Why would we want to? Why would anyone come here for that? To see a canal? I don't think so. Opposing this kind of high-rise, high-density development is exactly why people selected me for this council. It is not in the best interest of the future of this city. They do trust me to do that, and I've heard from so many people, thousands of people, who granted are not here tonight, but they have contacted me directly, and they do not want this. Upgrading and renovating the area is one thing, and that would be very beneficial, and I would approve of that. But to destroy the entire context of every building there is quite another thing. This project will have a huge negative impact on an already serious parking and traffic issue down there. Anyone who has tried to park here during the tourist season when the stores are open knows this. This is a problem for the surrounding businesses and the citizens in Scottsdale, and they have made it clear that they want to travel, especially when they're shopping, in their cars. If we make it difficult for shoppers to drive and park near the local businesses, those shoppers will go elsewhere. As for those who wish Scottsdale citizens would drive less and tourists would drive less, I would remind them that those of us on this council work for those citizens, not the other way around. It is not our place to tell them that they should stop traveling in their cars. It is our place to provide them with adequate parking and updated streets. I cannot support this project this evening. It's too massive, it's too dense, it's too tall, it offers too little open space, and it's underparked. It's encroaching on the public spaces, and frankly, it's just too much for this very small area of Old Town. We won't have an Old Town. If you want to quote someone, quote Lori Roberts in her article. This is trading cachet for cash. And that cachet is something we will never get back. And I will not be the vote that destroys our Old Town, Mr. Drinkwater. I also have a couple of individual issues that came up during the conversations. The downtown master plan that was approved 7-0 by this council gives people the right to ask for 150 feet in some areas of our downtown. It does not give an automatic right to have that 150 feet. That is something the council decides. Another thing is about selling the Rose Garden property along with approvement of this project. I am not in favor of selling it unless we have two totally independent appraisals and valuations for that property beforehand. That protects the city's benefit, the city's property, and gives us an accurate value of that property on the market today. I think that needs to be done. These appraisals should not be done by either the city or by Mr. Unger's corporation. Mr. Ortega was correct. The process by which the city has done this is tainted, and it could be used against us. And I don't want that. I'd also like to make it very clear, this is not about the Unger family. It's not about Carter, whom I personally like. It is about what I think is the best for the city and for the future of the city, because once we do this, it's not going back. It can't be changed back. We lose something, maybe that's what you want, but it's going to be lost, and you need to recognize that. I had something else here. Somebody made the comment that this council is afraid of change, that we're just not going to change anything. We want to keep everything the same. Well, I'd like to point out a couple of things. The last couple of weeks, we've made some major changes, and we have voted unanimously for those changes. Museum Square is huge. It's going to change a lot of things. Another thing we just did last night, Gentry on the Green, 41 plus acres of change. We're not afraid of change, but we want to make sure the change we vote for is a positive change for the future of our city. And I think that's hugely important. One thing, Mr. Little, I will address your comment about me and my husband. We have many disagreements on how I vote up here. Okay? I am not my husband's shadow. One of the major disagreements we had, I supported the bonds. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Cordy.
Sincere thank you for everyone showing up tonight. It fills my heart because, as Councilwoman Milhaven stated, sometimes we don't get the support for good projects. And tonight, what a great showing. Thank you to all that stood up here, the 30 plus people that spoke and stood tall for your respective opinion. And also those of you, many in this room tonight, that stood silently in support. That does not go unnoticed. So, this project has been a living project. It's been a dynamic project for years. I remember Fred Unger talking about this 3-4 years ago and saying, this is, we can really do some special stuff here. What happens? Well, the Great Recession happened, and things had to be put aside. But we can all agree that this project has not been an easy one. However, the actualization of long-time dreams and audacious goals don't come easy. And I believe this is an actualization of a long-time dream and an audacious goal. Yes, we have had issues, and it's not perfect. We have issues, we're concerned about massing, and we're concerned about parking, and we're concerned about tenant hardship. I have spoken with many the businesses in downtown. I've spoken with many individuals that are impacted by this project. Everyone in Scottsdale is impacted by this project. Regarding tenant hardship, I peddled Chevys off the corner of Scottsdale Road and McDowell, and I know there's a couple of staff members that remember that there were 2 consecutive road construction projects, one on McDowell Road and one on Scottsdale Road, that made our life miserable for 2.5 years. It wasn't easy, but we made it through. We have an existing landlord who has shown compassion for his tenants, and through good times and bad. And I know that he'll continue to take care of his tenants in every way that he can, because he's going to be that's the way Carter is. That's the way Spring Creek development is. When we talk about massing, significant changes have been accomplished in massing. The changes in height, the setbacks and the step backs. It is a different project than it was a month ago. And we talk about parking. I really find it amazing that we can all look at facts. We can all look at the same facts and come up with different interpretations. Is it underparked? Is it overparked? Is it overparked? This project is overparked. It's overparked by over 100 spaces. And that is like, how many millions of dollars to the developer out of the developer's pocket? We have a local developer, Spring Creek Development. We have seasoned talent working on this project. We have local passion to realize this long-time dream. And I'm pleased to say yes tonight.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Milhaven.
I'll be brief. I just have a couple of questions. I know folks raised a couple of issues from the dais that I'm hoping staff can lend clarity around the complexity of the issue. And so the first thing I'd like to ask staff is, can you help explain so folks will understand how the value was determined on the Rose Garden property, and how is it that we're selling it without going to auction? How is that possible?
Good evening, Mayor and Councilman Milhaven. We have done actually 2 appraisals on the property. This was independent appraisals. We did one over a year ago. We updated that several months ago to get a more current valuation, and we increased the sale price as a result of that, which the developer agreed to pay. The process that we're using to justify the sale without going through a competitive process, Section 2-221, paragraph C of our code says that when we're disposing of city property, we have to go through a competitive process, except for, and it lists about a half a dozen exceptions. One of the exceptions is if we're selling property to an adjacent property owner, and the city manager makes a determination that the greater public good is going to be served by combining the 2 adjacent parcels, and that's the situation that applies here. They are already a property owner for a property that's adjacent to the Rose Garden parcel.
Thank you. Thank you. So, right, so the city independently got 2 appraisals to determine the value. I think that sounds fair. And, I think that, at least in my opinion, doing a large master plan makes a whole lot more sense than doing small parcels that may or may not relate to each other. So I just wanted to address the concerns that perhaps that had been improper. I think, in my opinion, we certainly did it legally and we did it prudently. I also thank you, staff, for responding to the concerns of Councilwoman Whitehead about the open space along the canal, but I was hoping you could elaborate a little bit about the open space, how much open space. There seemed to be a big difference between 30 and 2%. Could you speak to the open space in the project? How much is there, and could you speak to the public accessibility of that open space?
Mayor, members of the council, Councilwoman Milhaven, I'm sorry. The open space is not a requirement in downtown zoning. So the open space that is provided is public benefit. And the open space, for example, around the relocated Bob Parks fountain is considered a public benefit. So we don't necessarily measure the open space the same way we would in other districts where it is a zoning requirement. I can't speak to the 33% that the applicant indicated because it does include space along the canal and spaces within the public right-of-way. But I can tell you that the open space that is being provided exceeds the ordinance requirement fairly substantially in a number of areas, including the public plaza in Area A, the Parks fountain, the improvements to the canal bank, and the pedestrian component of Unger Way. So there is more open space than is required.
And all of which you describe is open to the public?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Whitehead.
And I'll just add to that. Thank you. Yes, 150 feet also is not just flat out required, or we're not obligated to give. So when you look at the July 2nd meeting, it was made very clear, and again, I'm just wanted for clarity that while the open space was not defined, it was clearly stated that in exchange for height, there would be equivalent public benefit, and certainly most people consider open space public benefit. I just want to clarify that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Seeing no further requests to speak on this subject, I guess I would just want to close it out. I certainly am in support of this before we go to a vote, and that is that I think everybody has done an amazing job on the staff and the applicant as well. And I, too, want to thank everyone who's here to lend their opinion and their thoughts to this. When we have this kind of discourse, when we have this kind of deliberation, it's a positive reflection on our community. When we engage in personal attacks on anyone, that's when it becomes a problem. And we probably have we've had enough of that, really, and I think it's time, whether it's in the papers or whether it's in emails or whether it's threats that are expressed in any other way. It really has no place in Scottsdale. So I think this is a nice example of some great discourse, and there's always going to be differences of opinion. But there isn't a person on this council that doesn't want the best for Scottsdale. We may see it differently individually, but we're all looking for the best possible resolution. So with that said, I think we're now ready then for a vote. We have the motions on the table, and it's been complete and been seconded. So those in favor, please indicate by aye and register your vote. Aye. Motion passes 4-3. With that, our business on this item is complete, and I normally do try to gavel down any kind of applause because this isn't a theater, but I certainly appreciate the sentiments as it goes. So if we do have an additional agenda item, so if you want to stay for it, you're certainly welcome to stay. If not, I'd ask that you leave quietly, please. And if you have conversations, please have them outside with the reporters or otherwise. We'll give you a few minutes to clear the room. I am going to ask you that we do have to continue our business, so if you could take the conversation outside, I would very much appreciate it.